Change was sort of thrust upon me a little bit, John, I would say, in my business life when I made some changes. And there were changes that I was going to make, but probably the timing was wrong. It wasn't the timing I would have made them in. And what I wanted to change, certainly in my business life, was to have an easier life, because I was working very, very hard. And I didn't understand and realize how much pressure and stress I was under until I made a change, actually. And sometimes I think we end up being like, I don't know if the story of the frog is true or not, where the frog's in the water and the water's slowly getting hotter and hotter and it doesn't jump out because it doesn't realize it's being boiled alive. I think I was slightly being boiled alive.
I relate to that in my own professional life because I spent many years working in accountancy. And towards the end of my career as an accountant, I found myself working longer and longer hours. I was on a reasonably good salary, but I was putting more and more pressure on myself. And one day I had to say to myself, John, this is not sustainable. I need to take redundancy here from my business and to move on and find my purpose in life. And like yourself, I've done that. And I did that at the very onset of the COVID pandemic. So what made you pivot from running a speaker bureau to working with speakers or professional speakers to help them to get more bookings and more fees?
Yeah, so I suppose the pivot in a way was it's a change, total change in market, because the market, my bureau was working B2B. We were working with big corporates, big organizations, providing a service. And I had a big team and a big turnover, very successful business, been in it for a long time. The pivot, I like to call it a pirouette because I think it's more elegant. Not that I'm a particularly good dancer, but I do like the pirouette idea. That meant that I was then working B2C. So I was working directly with individuals as opposed to businesses. So that was quite a major change. And there was a huge, huge learning curve for me. But in many ways, it made it very personal because you are working so much with an individual and an individual's aspirations. And the other change, I suppose, as well, is that in doing that, my work became much more simplified because it was very much about my expertise and what I had learned running a bureau, which meant things were simplified once I'd gone through that learning curve. But there was a big learning curve. And the huge advantage, I'm sorry, it's a long answer here. The huge advantage for me was, though, that I stayed in the same industry. So I was already known by my new clients or my new prospects because I had been in that industry for 23 years. So that was a big advantage. So I think if you're pivoting or pirouetting into a market where you're not known, that's a much harder thing to do.
Of course, I had that experience myself because I moved from accountancy initially into working on technology because I had a graduate diploma in computer science and I was going to do all this cloud accounting applications. And then that wasn't working out for me because nobody saw any value in what I was offering. And then I decided to become a professional speaker and career coach, which was a new sector for me altogether. I was completely unknown in the area and I had to go back to the very beginning and start to learn new skill sets. And what I found from my experience over the last couple of years is you actually develop self-esteem and self-assurance by working towards your purpose and developing new skills and learning to develop those new skills and make them into monetizable skills, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, brilliant. Fantastic. And well done.
So what experience have you had over the past couple of years in helping people who want to get more bookings or get higher fees as paid professional speakers?
Well, very simply, what I've been doing is applying what we did in the bureau, in the speaker bureau, and taking what we used to do, because speaker bureaus, if you're in the world of speaking, you'll know that they're very good at sales and marketing. They're very good at the business side. They're very good at developing relationships and sort of, leveraging those relationships and getting more business from each of the clients they work with and more business for each of the speakers they work with. So I've been sort of dissecting and sort of working out, well, hang on, what is it that we did and how did we do it? And how can I teach speakers to do it for themselves? That's really what I've been doing. But I've also been working with speaker bureaus as well, because I've got vast experience myself working internationally, where many bureaus haven't had international experience, and many bureau agents haven't. And I was lucky. I had fantastic training when I came into the industry, which I think many people are lacking in that training. I think they're thrown in at the deep end and you have to sort of learn the ropes as you go. So I've been able to also work with some of my former competitors and help them to grow their bureau businesses as well. Does that answer your question, John? Did I answer it?
Yes, that's a very
good
good point that you're making there, because you came into the industry many years ago, and when you decided to pirouette your business at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, you had knowledge of the speaker bureau sector for many years beforehand. You were able to apply that knowledge then to help your new clients who were professional speakers who want to get more bookings or higher fees. You help them to apply that knowledge to help them to achieve their goals. But also, you've worked with other speaker bureaus to help them to develop their business model. So you had both sides of the coin, I suppose you could say there. That's a very good response. Yeah. And what are the common misconceptions, I suppose you could say, when you have a client who approaches you to get more bookings or higher fees? What are the common misconceptions you find when people approach you and they want to work with you? Do they have an open mindset, or are they just too focused on getting the fee or the more bookings without actually thinking through what their service offering is?
I think what I'm seeing with speakers often is that they're not clear on what their proposition is. They're not entirely clear on what the problem is that they solve and what the outcomes are that they deliver. And sometimes we have to sort of take a step back and really get into that. And also then, who are the people that will benefit from this? So it's sort of, we have to take a step back before we do anything. But many people, I suppose the biggest misconception is that a bureau or an agent or a manager will take you on at whatever stage you are in the business and whatever you're earning, and that they will do all the work for you. They won't. You have to have momentum. You have to already be successful. And even if you are successful, you may still not be a good fit for many bureaus, managers, or agents. So there's always this misconception that somebody else is going to do the sales and marketing for me. I've just got to focus on the speech and being a great presenter and a great speaker. I'm afraid you have to learn the sales and marketing, and you have to learn to manage your business. And of course, you will agree with me that you have to learn to manage the finances too.
Of course. And I think to become a successful paid professional speaker, it involves quite a substantial upfront investment in developing new skills, doing your sales and marketing, getting your LinkedIn content out there. It doesn't happen overnight. You really have to be prepared to take a risk and work at it before you see a sizable income coming into that business. That's been my experience, to be quite honest, that you have to, take a risk and invest upfront in developing your skill set and developing your brand. It takes time, it takes effort, and it takes commitment. You have to be prepared to wait for the rewards to come later. That's been my experience, to say the least. And I do think there that you're making a very good point. And I had a similar discussion some time ago with Lois Creamer, where she said that speakers or any business person needs to be really focused on their niche offering and has to be so laser focused. Would that be your experience with people coming into the professional speaking industry, or even speaker bureaus that want to develop their business model, that they're not focused enough on what their service offering is?
Often they're not clear on what it is. Often they don't. And a lot of the time I'm working with speakers just so that they get really clear and strong clarity on, who do I serve, and what's the outcome, and what's my offering. Absolutely. And I think there's always a fear that if you go too niche, are you turning away other work? Are you making a mistake? And so, yes, you should go niche, but in going niche, you need to check that there is enough of a market, there's enough demand. I always like to start with the market personally, rather than starting with any expertise or any topic. So I always go back and say, well, what's going on in the market? What's needed? What's relevant? If you're wanting to make this into a business, rather than starting with maybe your passion or your topics or what you want to talk about, start with, well, what does the market need, and how can I serve that market, and how can I help it? And the bigger the market you go for, so if you're going for an international speaking market, you have to be narrow. The smaller the market, you can be wider. So if you're a local speaker in Norway, for example, you can be wider than you would be if you were that same Norwegian speaker speaking internationally. So it really does vary. So there isn't a sort of like one size fits all, but you definitely have to start with the market.
Great advice to any person starting any business, I think, is what is the market? And what's the problem you're going to try to solve for people, and how can you help people to overcome the problems they have in their lives? There's no point saying, I'm good at X or Y. You have to have a realistic proposition for people to help them to overcome problems in their lives. That's where the starting point in any business is. I agree with that. One final question here for you, Maria. You've changed, your business, or you pirouetted your business at the beginning of the pandemic. What did you learn about yourself as a person from all that experience?
Actually, I will correct you. It wasn't at the beginning of the pandemic. It was sort of like more or less when it was finishing. I started doing the job on the side because speakers needed help, and then had to take a decision because both businesses were then back and full. The bureau came back in full. And I thought, I'm too old, John, to run two businesses. Nobody wanted to take over the bureau, crazy people that they are. None of my team wanted to run it because they knew how hard it was. What did I learn about myself? I learned that I had a fantastic team, actually, and I took many of my team with me, a smaller number. And I learned that they saw my skills and expertise and ability for me more clearly than I did, which was really interesting, because what I now do for speakers, I see what makes them commercial and what their expertise is for them. And I couldn't see it for myself. I didn't when I first did the pirouette. It happened because people were coming to me for help. And it was my team that said, you're really good at this. You should make this into a business. And I hadn't seen it originally. And so I learned that other people often see things that you don't see in yourself. I also learned that actually I had worked under a lot of stress for a long time. And I've learned that I actually like having no stress and a lot less stress. I thrive under that. So that's working very well for me. And that I really, really love working with individuals and helping them and seeing them on their journey. When you're working with a corporate or a big organization that's coming to you in the bureau and they want a solution, they want a speaker, they tick the box, they've done what they need, and they don't come back to you if they need you again. Working with individuals, working with speakers, they keep me posted when they have a success. They keep me informed. They come back to me when they've got another challenge. I feel like I'm on the journey with them. That is so rewarding. I found that I thrive on other people's success.
It's a great answer. I understand what you're saying there, Maria, because I would be a person who prefers to do one-to-one coaching with clients as against group coaching, because like yourself, I invest a lot of time and effort into ensuring my clients are moving forward as people, not just as professional people, but as a person in their own right. And I love to see them making advances in their life, whether it's business or personal. That's, to me, is where my purpose is. I find that group coaching can be a lot more stressful. If you have people who are there reluctantly, you've got to bring them along. That doesn't really work out for me. I just find the one-to-one coaching is much more effective for me. I also find that you have to follow your purpose and your passion in life. But the major takeaway for me today from this conversation is anybody who wants to start a business, whether it's a coaching business or any other business, you have to find out what the demand in the marketplace is, first of all. There's no point having a passion for something for which there's no demand. You have to do your market research first and foremost. That's the most important point, I think, is find out what the demand in the business, in the market sector is, and can you meet that demand? Is there anything else you'd like to say to the audience before I let you go, Maria?
Obviously the topic here is change, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's sort of, being adaptable and being able to change. I think we just have to keep learning. We have to keep learning. We have to keep open-minded. And I think the biggest changes we're going to be facing coming up, which certainly I've been facing and continue to face, is embracing what technology can do to help us. Certainly AI is going to have a huge impact on especially small businesses where we can really leverage it and use it to our advantage. But that takes learning and being open-minded and thinking, what are the opportunities? What can we do? So I suppose the bit of advice would be is to keep learning, keep open-minded, and learn a bit about the new tech.
I saw a very interesting LinkedIn post there yesterday by Mark Lee, to be honest, where he had a conversation with Roland Talwar, and they were talking about the impact of AI applications like Chat GDP in big organizations. And what that allows is for senior managers or senior directors to make strategic decisions much quicker. And also you have a lot more redundancy in terms of software applications, because big organizations are now rolling out updates to software applications pretty well overnight. They don't rely on having to do huge amounts of coding over days. That can be done via chat GDP. So the time frame for actually doing updates in software has been much reduced. So there's a huge amount of advantage out there to service providers and those type of AI products. I think it's a great idea there that you have to, roll with the punches and get on board with AI. This has been a fascinating conversation today, Maria. Thank you very much for your time.
You're very kind, John. You're always very kind. Thank you.
Thank you very much.